The application process is now open until September 2nd, so if anyone knows anyone who has interest in law enforcement, there's 18 different municipalities, departments participating in the consortium. I would recommend they go to the consortium testing and sign up.
Questions for the Chief of Police?
Just one general comment. I know this is the highlights of your work, but I noticed an ever-increasing amount of fraud investigations. About 1/3 of this report is fraud. And again, just urging the members of the public to protect yourself and your neighbors. I know one of our taxpayers got in a dispute with a contractor, and I got involved a little bit. And even though that may not have been fraud, it certainly was the biggest ripoff I ever saw. And they were actually licensed or registered with the township as a vendor. But please just, the fraud is running rampant out there, and it's, just please be careful. Thank you.
If I can piggyback off that real quick, if anyone has questions, whether you think people are contacting you fraudulently, call a police officer, give us a call at the station, we'll give you a call back. We'll advise you whether we think it's fraudulent and try and give you some advice.
Thanks, Jim. Other questions? Public Works, Chad.
Good evening, Commissioners. I have nothing to highlight tonight. If you have any questions for Public Works, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Questions? Solicitor.
No report, but we will have executive session this evening on some litigation matters, some potential litigation matters, employee matter, and real estate.
Thanks. Reports E, Township Engineer. Both items are in the packet. Michelle, anything to highlight there?
Just as I always do, if you can pay attention to page 6, where the zoning issues are in the event we have to move forward, citations.
Questions? Reports, tax collector reports in your packet as well. Any questions? Committee chair reports, open space and rec.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. We did not meet this month, consequently I have no report, but I'd like to take just a second and give Chad a big shout out for keeping our trails and our roads open. They had Snyder Road open 2 hours after Med Ed got the wires out of the way, and they had the trail open soon after that. So if everybody didn't know, I just wanted to publicly acknowledge it. Thanks, Chad.
Nice one. Fire and ambulance. Don's not here tonight. Anybody representing fire? Packet, the item is in your packet. Moving to old business. Old business A, this is the master venture piece, so Eric and Michelle?
Sure, so we do have representatives here if you have any questions for them, but they appeared, I believe, last month.
Correct.
Yeah, you're in the minutes, so. And they were requesting a rezone for a project off of Farmington Ave to change it from R2 to R3, I believe, but basically to rezone property, and they showed you the proposal for their townhouse development that would link to an existing townhouse development by way of an emergency access. We're anticipating it would be a private cul-de-sac that they would be putting in. Obviously, they would offer it for dedication, but the reason for the rezone request is that the property is constrained the way it is. It is right next to an existing townhouse community, and what we can do is utilize this rezone request to actually rezone some of those townhomes, existing townhomes, so that they're zoned properly, and then link it with this proposed site. So they're really just here asking for this board to allow the process to move forward, allow us to write the ordinance, and then send it off to the county, and then thereafter to advertise it for potential action. So you are not approving it tonight. You'll have that before you in the future. You could deny it in the future, but so really my advice always at this situation, if the answer is definitely no, say no now. if it's a maybe or a probably, then let us go forward with the process to, start it, get feedback from the county, and then see if it's worthwhile to go forward once they have public comment, at some future time.
That said, so we need to have first of all, any questions for Eric on what you just covered?
Yeah, last month, I believe this is a rezone, but it's also switching some zoning, am I correct?
That's correct, so, and Michelle, you have to chime in and give me the name of the existing development, that's right next. So, that one is currently not zoned for townhouses, but townhouses exist, so that's the one where we would actually rezone some of those properties so that they are properly zoned as townhomes. And then add on, link to that, this property that Master Ventures has, which is right next door, zone it for townhomes so that their proposed development could be built on their property as well.
Good.
So just so you're aware, the process that's required of the township then is we would identify all those properties, and the property owners are the ones that are being rezoned will get specific letters from us saying, hey, come out to this, give us your feedback. We don't have to send notices out to other people, but if their property is being rezoned, we have to send it to them. We then also have to advertise the proposed ordinance for 2 successive weeks, and that gives public notice to everybody else at that point. But anyone whose property is being rezoned will get a letter from us saying, come out.
So that said, I believe that the names are all listed on the folks that will be affected in that standpoint.
All the properties are identified.
Okay, all right. So it is to move forward, the option is not to do anything on this and not approve it, or is it to move it forward as Eric explained. So is any more discussions on that before we do a motion, then another discussion? Okay, I need a motion.
What's the motion for to do?
So it's
nothing?
really to authorize our office to prepare the ordinance and start the rezone process.
I would,
Move forward, essentially.
I would like to make that motion to move forward to start drafting the ordinance.
I'll second that.
And we got a motion and a second. More discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries.
And just so the applicants, I expect you to leave, so just so you know, we're trying to link this, we have another one that's before the board,
Right.
which I haven't written yet, but that one has a little more moving parts to it. We are trying to combine the two, so that we just have one hearing to do the two, but we'll keep you informed as when we anticipate you being on the agenda.
Sounds
You'll at
good.
least know when it goes out, to the county to start that 30-day clock.
Right.
If you give the county 30 days to review it, so you'll see well in advance of it being on our agenda. again.
Right, and we'll coordinate with that.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next item is old business, that is B, that's the Gambone Development, North State Street. You guys seen a map on this one before. Oops. I don't know if you've seen this one, this is a pretty good,
That's pretty good overview.
kind of look. So here's the bank, stuff over here to the left, gonna come in here, we got a gate going on here. And up here is, these are the items, and then we have the actual map piece that helps out some more. Which one would you like to kind of talk through? Want the flat map, or do you want the?
I can do either one, just let me get my bearings straight on this one. All right, I got it.
Okay,
Yeah.
So there's two parts to this request, and I believe Gambone was here 2 months ago, I believe, so not last month. The first one is State Street, which is currently beside the credit union there, and has the gate that blocks access to State Street. The first question that Gambone had for the township was, how do we want that road designed? They offered basically to design it any way the township wants. They would do a through street, meaning 2 ways in and out, basically from Upland Square all the way through. They were willing to make it 1 way for any portion of it, either direction. They also were willing to design it with a cul-de-sac at the top end of the page there, so anyone coming south on State Street could only come so far. They would hit a cul-de-sac and then have to turn around and go back. And then anyone who would be coming, I think, north on State Street from Upland Square could do a loop around their project, but they would not be able to go north on State Street. We had staff look at this as well, and I know Chad commented on it, and some of our concern was that if we did not put a through road there, that the stub that's down by the bank, as it currently exists, we have to plow that. It's township road, so we did a cul-de-sac, with the plows would come down to the cul-de-sac, would have to go back out to Route 100, come all the way down, enter the bank site, plow that little portion of the road. So it'd be difficult for the plows. So we thought a better choice would be to have the road, at least I did, have the road go through, and then if we saw, I think, well, through land development, have them submit a traffic study, we could review that and decide whether we wanted them to restrict it to one way, either direction, if the traffic study pointed us in that direction, or to make it a through street. Now, there was a condition on a prior development which required a cul-de-sac to go in. However, that's binding on the developer, not binding on you. So you could allow or agree differently with the developer for this development and allow them to go a different direction if you wanted. So we can address that issue, or I can talk about the other issues as well.
I do have one question.
Sure.
Was there an agreement made with the people who live on State Street when it was closed, and why was the road closed before?
So there was no agreement in particular in writing with the public. I have not had the time to research the minutes to see what was discussed at previous board meetings.
So that's the agreement, so there is agreement between the developer and the township, but not with it gives no rights to any residents, and it doesn't go into the reason why it was done. So we looked at that, and we don't know why it was done that way.
Thank you.
Sure.
Eric, that cul-de-sac that you mentioned previously, what was that in reference to? I can't quite remember. Was it something on the other side of this?
No, it's up top.
The cul-de-sac?
Yeah, why was there was another development plan you said, which had a cul-de-sac. What
Well,
was proposed to
no,
go there?
so it wasn't, so what it was, I'm gonna stand up, so I hope you can hear me.
Okay,
That development that linked, this agreement with Gambone, there was actually a sliver of ground right here that belonged to the bank. So they came in for a minor subdivision to give this sliver of ground to this piece and take it from the bank, so it got subdivided off the bank. It was separated by 2 roads from the bank, so it didn't really belong with the bank. So as part of that approval, the township had, as part of that minor subdivision, it was really a reverse subdivision, it was taking it from one lot, just giving it to the other. That's where they added this condition to have have the cul-de-sac up there.
okay.
So again, that doesn't give me any feedback either as to why, and I think nobody sitting here was on that board at the time, and so that's why the why is befuddling all of us. We don't know why.
Good to know.
So Eric, where exactly was that, where they're looking at putting in the
Cul-de-sac? So, yep, so it's right here, the cul-de-sac would come down about to this property here, it would bulb into this property, so it would give access to this, and then the stub street would come, everybody can see, sorry for my back, would come up and connect, so these people could come up, loop through the site, or get from the site to the bank, but this section of roadway would be removed.
So it is, that would you say remove, so that'd be permanent, so we have the cul-de-sac going in here.
Yep.
Which would be permanent, and this road would be removed, and folks would come in and go in this way, or back in this way.
Yep, correct.
All right, and then that piece said, if you have these, the one with cul-de-sac's permanent, the other one that you mentioned, the option is the option of putting signs or blockage here to create a one-way situation,
Yeah.
where we could always reverse it if it came to a point where, hey, we'd want it open. So it may be advantageous to some folks that live up here saying, hey, I wanna go right to this grocery store, I don't wanna go all the way back there, 100, all the way back in and then come in. So they may change their mind if, we don't know what the resistance is up there.
And that's why I think it would be important now, and that's the reason for my recommendation to put the full road in and leave that decision on how to control it later, is that plows could use it, plows could get back and forth, and we would ask the developer to do a traffic study during land development, and we could see what those numbers, projected numbers would be and which direction they would anticipate them to go. And from that study, if you see a lot of projected cars either going up or coming from there, we can take public comment at those points in time and decide whether we do restrict it to one way, or one way certain times a day. If you build it, you at least leave the option open for you to decide later. If you don't build it, the decision's made, that the plows have to drive all the way around, so.
And when staff and consultants looked at this, not only did we recommend a traffic study if the road is left open, but we could also request that the developer repave North State Street all the way out to Route 100 by the police station.
So with that discussion, well, we need to,
I have one more thing. I did submit my comments in writing. I just wanna make sure that if we do leave it a two-way, obviously we can control it in the future from one way, either way, or block it off. But I know that how tenants are, and if they say, you know, if we do change the road traffic flow, you know, we gotta make sure we're held harmless. You know, so it's, say what, if it's impacting their business, I mean, that's gonna be up to us, and I'm not sure how that's worded. Would that be a condo area up there?
It's proposed to be a condo, yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, so we have to have that as part of the agreement, but that's kind of far down the road.
all right, so I think what maybe a possible solution is to get the genesis of the gate now. I got up there, so we have a background on that. And then for this group, the major thing here is cul-de-sac hard, which means it's hard to reverse, or we do the study and determine, so if we need to put up different signage.
Right, so what the developer's asking for now is not for a vote or anything like that, but for direction. Is these plans to cost them tens of thousands of dollars to create. So if you wanted a cul-de-sac, they wanted to design it with a cul-de-sac. If you wanted to build a street, they want to design it with a street put in, so that they can plan as well. So that's the sketch plan review right now, is they want to know how to move forward with the preliminary plans. And nothing prevents you from changing your mind, it's just that they kind of wanted feedback now to see where you were leaning at this point in time.
So, what do we think?
Just one more quick thing, Teresa, another thing staff talked about is if you do go back to the cul-de-sac, that we abandon the stretch from Citadel to the cul-de-sac, so the township's no longer responsible for that portion. And I don't know if that's a possibility, so if you were to require the cul-de-sac, that the township would abandon the stretch of North State Street from Citadel to the cul-de-sac, so we're no longer responsible for that portion of the road.
The plow.
Becomes a private road then.
So it's just highlighted on the map. Here going up the position of the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, I like that.
What's that?
Cul-de-sac and abandon the road.
Well, that's, if we go with a cul-de-sac, that would
Be my
That would be,
recommendation.
but if we go with the road with the option of keeping as is, with the control signs up there, with the option and flexibility to turn it off if we decided to do that.
Is there anybody who wants the cul-de-sac?
Well, if we could get it with what Michelle said, and we abandoned the road, I would definitely be.
You want that other than a two-way street?
It's gonna, if we don't have the cul-de-sac, it's gonna increase traffic on State Street. So, I've heard from one resident already who's opposed to it, but that's one resident. But I would not be opposed to cul-de-sac with that stipulation.
Well, I still like the flexibility routine of going through the road and being able to, because once we put that in, it's done. And that road just gets grown on, grass or whatever goes in there. I still think there's a lot of population up north of that position that may like that open to be able to service that area right in there. you can see the stores that are going into that place. If we put the signs up, control it, going to the north, and then if we do get responses, then we can open it up. At the same time, once we find out what exactly happened with that gate that's up there now, we have the option of shutting that down as well. Remember, the cul-de-sac is permanent. Others?
So we would have the option to put the gate back up, if we decided the study didn't work in our favor. As far as,
You could do
Yeah,
that,
we,
yeah. Or you can make it one way, if,
Right.
or one way in, so the people heading south could get into it, or one way out, so people leaving could go that, one way or the other. And maybe, and you could
So
change it
could
during
we-
different directions during different times of
Could
day.
be one way this way to here, and one way down this way.
Right.
You don't have to make it two full open lanes both ways.
that just gives you optional flexibility.
I like that idea better.
So who owns the property on the other side of State Street?
I don't know.
That-
It is
that
privately
portion
held
right there,
though.
where it says
Yep.
North State Street,
Yeah,
that is privately owned, and we asked the developer, would they, they should contact the owner to try to purchase that, and they've been trying to do that, and they've been successful in getting a response.
But that's definitely one of the concerns, so if we
Right.
would go the cul-de-sac route, we would have to make sure the cul-de-sac comes down deep enough that it would give access to that property.
We can't block them off?
No.
No,
Or we couldn't abandon the street below it, so we have to make sure that property has access to develop. They're not gonna get access to Route 100 in the future, so State
yeah.
Street is their only way to get to that piece of property. So we just have to make sure whatever we do maintains access to that piece of property
yes.
from either direction.
Others? Okay, who would like the flexibility route? Who wants the cul-de-sac? Flexibility?
I like the flexibility.
I like the flexibility, but the flexibility includes shutting that road down if we have to. And there may be an issue like on Sunday mornings there, where we only permit one way in because of the heavy traffic load on Sunday mornings that may happen there. But flexibility helps us, I think, but Dave makes a good point with the road too, so. And this is not the final decision, we're gonna wait also from feedback from the public.
Yes.
okay,
All right, so,
flexibility.
okay. All right, you pass that on.
I will. The other piece of that development is they're also asking for some text amendments, hopefully you saw those. Most of them would be fine, in that they only impact the overlay district, which is, quite frankly, is just the properties you see in front of you, and then the one that's between Route 100 and this property. So, some of them relate to the future ownership that they're proposing here, is it being the condo. They wanna make sure they can develop it as a entire site and not parcel by parcel. What that would mean is if one of the buildings requires 25 parking spaces and they lot this out, the lot itself may only have 20, but as an entire site, the entire site will have the parking that's required for each and every use that's proposed out there. So as a whole, it would meet it, but maybe not unit by unit. So, and that's typical for a shopping center development. It's just our ordinance right now doesn't allow it. West Pottsgrove's does. They're trying to make their approval process be the same or similar on both sides of the township line, which, just for everyone's benefit, I'll point that out for you. So, township line is right here. So really just everything on this side is Upper Pottsgrove, everything on the other side is West Pottsgrove. So really a small portion of the property is in Upper Pottsgrove, but giving them the flexibility again to condo this helps them design it in a way that makes sense. That's most of what their things is. The major one for you is that the upper lot that they're proposing is a church use. Right now, your overlay does not allow a church use. Your underlying district, R2, does allow a church use. So they would be allowed to put a church there if they develop this as R2, which would mean they would have to lot out real lot at that location, develop it as a church. But as, under the overlay, they wouldn't be allowed to do that. So I think the major question for this board would be, do you want to allow a church use within the overlay district?
And that coupled with this argument through West,
It does, but the church.
I mean, the
yeah.
rest of the stuff for.
Yeah, so I have a call into the solicitor there to see where the status is, but we're told that it's the West Pottsgrove side is pretty much in compliance with their ordinances. But I will confirm that for you.
Okay, so they're just matching for symmetry, right?
Yes, and one of the other items that to point out that's a minor issue in my mind is that right where the line is, kind of the southern portion of the site, right across State Street from the bank, is a proposed car wash. The car wash itself is in West Pottsgrove, and I would say probably 90-95% of the car wash use would be in West Pottsgrove, but there are a couple drive aisles that are in Upper Pottsgrove. And as part of the car wash use, if you can imagine how a car wash works, is you drive in, you hit a kiosk, you pay the person, then you drive through, or pay the kiosk, and then you drive through and get your car washed and detailed or whatever you're doing. Our ordinance doesn't allow accessory structures. So by our ordinance, they wouldn't be allowed to have those kiosks. So they're asking for accessory structures, and I think there's a way we could write it that it wouldn't be abused within this district. And again, within this district, it would only apply to these couple properties and the one across the street. So you're not risking that allowing it here would run rampant through your whole township, allowing this to happen, because this ordinance only applies to a couple properties already. And the reason for that is essentially this ordinance is a commercial development along Route 100 across from the Upland Square Shopping Center. So it is already kind of concisely drawn as to what this applies to. That's the other types of changes they're talking about, which are very minor in nature, and we can make sure that they only apply to this development. Again, some feedback, we just wanted to kind of chat about the church a little bit and see if that's something you want to allow. And again, it's allowed in R2, it's just not allowed in the overlay.
What are the drawbacks?
From a zoning perspective is, I don't know how often you see a church in a shopping center, so it's not something that's typical when you're zoning or in a zoning district. The other drawback would just be financial. Right in the intent of the section for the overlay, it is to promote shopping center uses, so retail and office, and basically to make these properties income producing properties for the owners. So, and by that definition, the township. So a church could come in once it's lotted out differently and become a nonprofit use. Can be a tax exempt parcel, and then you lose out on the development and the taxes that would produce for you if it were a retail or some other type of shopping center use.
So it's a revenue factor now.
That's one of the considerations, sure, and just, I mean, what you want in a shopping center is something that's gonna draw other shoppers in. That's really how, you see shopping centers do well, that either offices go there so that when people are on their lunch break, they go down and visit the shops. Or if other people are visiting the office, they visit the shops at the same time, or they're visiting one shop, they visit the other shop. So if you have a church use that's only Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or majority Friday, Saturday, Sunday use, are you driving customers to these other uses at the same time? The benefit is it's gonna have a whole lot of parking. That's probably gonna be used a couple days a week. So you're gonna have a shopping center that's not gonna have a parking problem like a lot of shopping centers have at certain times of the year, around Christmas time and the like. So, so there's pluses and minuses,
But most of the retail is in West Pottsgrove.
most of it is. So yeah, so the far left building is a grocery store. The big building in the middle is retail. All the rest are income producing properties. You have some restaurants, car wash, and you have an auto parts store. I forget what some of the other ones were. the church would be the only one that's not retail or office.
Switch the grocery store to the church.
I was gonna say that, I was gonna say that.
I think we proposed that day one and
Yeah.
nobody bid on it,
Yeah.
so.
And just so the board's aware, so the other thing that was required as part of the Upland Square development, although that project was entirely in West Pottsgrove Township, the township does get a, fee every year. That fee goes up by 3% every year in an agreement with the developer. So if in fact you were to permit the church there, you could offset the lost revenue with that, with the impact fee, which I think you would want to require or request that anyway, just as we did for Upland Square development, which was totally not in our township, but definitely the intersection is impacted in our community and we take care of it.
So
Part of
that,
it.
that's an impact fee,
Yeah.
right there, okay.
So I think if we could reach that type of agreement, then it would take away the negatives of a church potentially going in there.
Okay.
And, like you said, you have occupants for all these, or most of these already?
When I last spoke to the developer, when we spoke to them officially here, 2 months ago, I think they were in strong discussions with many of the potential tenants. Since then, I spoke to, Mr. Gambone 2 weeks ago, and I think at that point in time, they had them all under agreement, except for 1 or 2, which they had, memorandums of understanding, which basically is the step before you enter into a formal lease. So basically, they had the terms, they were working out the hard terms, and then from that, they would develop the leases. So they're close. If they're not there, they're close on all of them, yes.
Okay.
Just one question, do we get final say or final approval on the condo agreement? Because there's a lot of stuff going on up there.
So what I normally look at those for is, and add to them, is there anything that detrimentally impacts the township either now or in the future? And then I add a clause to, it'll be part of any approvals they would get from us, is that we have a right to review the first draft. And then we add a clause that any amendments in the future that impact the township, they would have to bring to us to approve before they adopted them.
Didn't think about that.
Yep.
Good.
Okay, what would you like to do?
I think I have enough, just kind of hearing the questions, I have enough to get back to the I have enough to get back to the developer on the issues, and your concerns, so that, we can get them to submit a formal plan and then come through the more formal review process.
What are they looking like for timeline?
They're eager to build starting next year,
Yes.
so yeah, so I think they're gonna be back in front of us very quickly.
Okay.
All right, so that was a discussion item.